Please rise as Mr. Superintendent leads us in a prayer and pledge.
Okay. If you'll bow with me. Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, we come to you just thanking for your guidance and your wisdom that you so freely display on us. Lord, we know that we're missing some tonight, and we continue to lift up the Asbel family. We thank you and praise you for the blessings of his surgery going well. We continue to lift his family up. Lord, we ask you pray just for our nation. We pray for healing that will come together for the betterment of our students and our staff, Lord, as we just so appreciate being here in Levy County. We ask all these things in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Address the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. Now's the time for public comments. You guys bear with me. There's a new format tonight, so I'm going to try my best not to stumble through it. But if we have no comments, Ms. Lake, you're up.
Make it fast and hopefully I don't cough a lot. Oh, you have water. Okay. Embarrass myself. Let's see. The first slide is just walking through the different budget timeline for this upcoming fiscal year. Tonight's the budget workshop. On July 21st, which is a Thursday, we'll have the proposed budget. I do believe that's a morning meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll approve the trim ads at that point. That is the first of the statute meetings. Second is August 2nd is the tentative millage and budget meeting. That is at 6 o'clock. We'll adopt that. And then the final millage and budget is September 12th. That's at 5:01, so that when the meeting is done, I can run back to the office and upload everything to DOE. It's due that day. The first slide is showing where we're at and where I'm estimating we will be in terms of revenue collections for this year. I checked this, I think, a week ago. 2 weeks ago, and then my whole department was down last week, so I haven't run any new numbers, but I'm sure we've collected some more. So we've collected, as of then, we had collected 44 million, almost 45. We still had 2.6 to collect, but in taking a look at those collections, I estimate we will collect about 98% of that revised budget. If anybody has any questions, just ask as we move along. Yeah, there's not a lot of people here, right? The next are our general fund expenditures to date. So we have expended almost $46 million of a $48 million budget. We still have some contracts to pay out, which is payroll and benefits. We have one more payroll remaining. So it's going to be a small, it should be a pretty small one. And then we have other encumbrances, so accounts payable still has some remaining items to pay, and they will have one more AP as well. Those go into July, and we pull them back into June, but we look like we're going to expend about 98% of that budget. So we'll spend almost $47 million. So we'll move ahead into the first calculation and some things that we're experiencing with this year's budget. Some are unique, some are things that we've struggled with for years now. The first one is the implementation of Amendment 2, so the minimum wage language that's showing up in House Bill 5001. We have huge growth in scholarship costs and continued increases in FRS, and then there's some inflation and cost increases that are having to be managed in this budget just due to the current economy. First, we'll talk about Amendment 2 and House Bill 5001. So on November 3rd in 2020, we know it was voted, Amendment 2 was approved, and with that, we were going to escalate to $15 an hour by 2026. This September, we would have been at $11 an hour. So then in May 22 this year, when the governor signed House Bill 5001, which is what our FEFP it is in, he accelerated the timeline for school board employees to reach minimum wage. So now that language requires that the superintendent attests that all employees are paid $15 an hour by October 1st. It's not on or at, but it is by October 1st. So in looking at that and estimating, I dropped our employee pool in March. So this is a little coming off of older information. I don't have all of the new movements for our salary schedule yet, but I feel confident that in essence these percentages and things I'm going to share with you are not going to change much. We don't have huge turnover in our ESP schedules. So this is just an example of what this might look like. Our custodians are in our lowest group. They're paid $11.82 an hour on a 210-day schedule, 8 hours a day. So their annual salary is $19.8. After you add in FICA and you add in FRS, we contribute almost another $4,000. So total annual cost for the employer for us is almost $24,000. So now that same custodian at $15 an hour, the new annual salary will be $25,200. We'll come along with our FICA and our FRS, and we'll be contributing almost $5,000 in that area. And so our costs will have grown from $23,700 to a little over $30,000. So we see an increase in the employer side of about a little over $6,000, but the employee, that same employee, is getting a boost of a little over $5,000. So that's huge. I think that's pretty historic given any raises that I've seen since I've been here, and then also given the current economy. So for us, employee increases, we're looking at $530,000 going to increase the employer's payroll. When you come along and you add our additional costs and FRS and FICA costs, the total cost to us is a little over $633,000. I'll show you what makes up that $633,000. So 48% of our ESPs will see a salary increase due to House Bill 5001. Our hourly increases are going to range from 8 cents all the way up to $3.18. And I'll remind you, the last 3 years, I think we've done 50 cent, 25 cent, and 75 cent increases per hour to our ESPs. The average increase is $1.96. The annual increases range from around $770 all the way up to $5,300, with average increases being almost $2,800. Years of service, so I looked at years of service, not what step they are on the schedule. Step on the schedule tells you only how much experience they had when we hired them and maybe steps they've gotten since they've been here. So I looked at hire date to try to get an idea of who's benefiting from this, because due to compression you kind of just hear new employees are going to make what I make. So I kind of wanted to see what we had out there. So you have years of service ranging from 1 year, which is a little bit of an outlier. There weren't that many 1 year, so those would be people we hired last year. All the way up to 15 years, which also was an outlier. I think we only had one at 15 years. But the majority, the average years of service for this 48% of ESPs are 4 years with our district. So they've been here a little while. Again, that doesn't equate to their experience, just equates to the years that they've been employed by the school board. And again, I think it's important to drive home this is a historic salary increase. We aren't blind to compression that's occurring. Compression needs to be addressed. Compression cannot be addressed in 1 year. But I don't think that we need to forget how huge this is and what this is going to mean for some of our lowest paid employees here at the district. So FRS, kind of give you an idea of how those increases are trending up. So in 2021, you saw a 1.5% increase in our budget, which was about $400,000. Last year, it was just under 1%. And then this year, it's a little over 1%. So we're looking at another $300,000 increase just based on that 1.9% increase in FRS. So these increases have to be covered from that same pot of money that's increased to cover those salary increases in House Bill 5001, which is our change in our BSA. So the change in our BSA results in what we call new money, and that new money is all that you have to contribute for these new costs. All right, so looking at House Bill 501, this is what I start my budget out with, but the second calculation, when we meet again on the 21st, we will have gotten the second calculation, which gives us the required local effort, and that's what we'll actually build our tentative and final budget on. So it'll change marginally. So the BSA is being increased by $214.49, which is huge. But with Levy County, we have a lower cost of living, so we have the district cost differential, DCD. So that our $214.49 turns into $156.37 per FTE. That's just a reminder, because you're going to hear a lot of news about how high this BSA is, and it really is. It's a lot of money. But when you think about your county, just remember it's not exactly that high, and that is due to the makeup of our particular district. Everybody has a different DCD, and usually it's because of a lower cost of living here. So our estimated increase in flexible funds. So flexible funds are the growth in the BSA and times any growth that you have in FTE, unless it's for scholarships, which a lot of our growth is going to scholarships. And then we have a few categoricals that are a little more flexible, that aren't as narrowly directed on how we spend it, like sparsity. There's a couple. So when I grab the growth in BSA and a couple of those more flexible categoricals, I come up with, and a little bit of growth in local funding. It's estimated now, because we don't have the RLE to get that true local increase. We're looking at a little over $2.2 million increase. So that is a lot, but you'll see how quickly that gets eroded. So the funds we need to increase to $15 an hour to cover increased in benefits for that, plus the increase in benefits across the board for FRS, and some new instructional positions we had to add due to growth. We've eroded almost $1.3 million right there. Then that BSA, that increase in BSA, includes flow-through money that's going to go to your scholarships. So 2.2 is great, but I'm estimating that over 500,000 of that's going to come off the top and go right back to scholarships. Any growth in charters is also going to be reduced from that, and our charters have stayed pretty flat. We have a little bit of growth, so we will lose a little bit of that to charters, but I don't have those numbers yet. And so far, looking at this budget, we're around $400,000 in just increase due to costs, custodial costs, utilities, fuel, some transportation costs. I'm already seeing the budget grow in some of those areas to about $400,000. So that leaves us about $53,000 of what we would say new money. Again, this is estimated depending on where the charters come in and some of those other areas. So we quickly eroded what sounded like a huge, and it is a huge growth for us. But so much of that went into our employees. $1.3 million is going back to our employees. Scholarships. So 17-18, I started that year because that's the year I started. And so I had that data quickly and easily. So you can see McKay in 17-18 was a little over $535,000. You can see it declined just slightly in 18-19 to about 514. 19-20 was the first year of FES, and you can see McKay didn't really decline. It did decline, but they just moved over to FES. And you can see there we had a total of about $713,000 in scholarships that year. 2021, again, you're seeing that pattern of McKay moving to FES, and we're at $1 million now. So 17-18, 500,000, and we're at $1 million year before last. This year, we are at 2.3 million, with 1.8 of that being FES. So Family Empowerment Scholarship has grown from 257,000 in 1920 to 1.8 million in 21-22. Now, and some of that will include Gardner. Some of they combined a couple other scholarships in that. So some of that growth is also due to that. But that's 7 times more than what we saw in 1920. And I'm estimating the total loss for 22-23 to be almost 2.9 million. So again, 500,000, 17-18, and we're going on almost 2.9 million in losses to scholarships. These are just a few of those categoricals that aren't as flexible, and are also, you hear a lot about unfunded or underfunded mandates. These categoricals are some of ours that hold a few of those. So we know Safe Schools, what all comes with that. We're going to see a small growth of about 62,000 for that. Mental health allocation has its own set of rules. Now we're needing a mental health coordinator or someone to pick up those responsibilities, but you're only seeing growth of about 36,000 in that categorical. Transportation's growing by about 92,000, but we are always in the red for transportation. Instructional materials, $1,000, almost $2,000 growth there. We would not have been able to fully implement ELA adoption or upcoming math adoption if it were not for those federal ESSER dollars that have come into our district. And then we lost the digital classroom allocation. So last year we got 100,000, this year we get nothing. We do have federal dollars earmarked for some of those activities, but all of our IT needs rest on the shoulders of E-rate. Every reimbursement they get for E-rate goes right back into the district and into the classrooms to serve our IT needs. If we did not have that reimbursable with E-rate, I don't know what we would do, because that feeds all of that. And then the Florida Teacher Classroom Salary Increase Allocation, TSIA is what we call it. It is growing by 466,000 roughly this year, which is a nice healthy growth, but we'll kind of break that one down because those numbers are a little misleading with that one as well.
I'd touch on the digital classroom. If you remember, I believe it was 2015, 2016 when that first came out. So, and it was at $500,000 plus based off your FTE. So everybody had a base of 500,000. And then 3 years after that, so it was cut to 250, and then it was on the chopping block last year until right at the last minute. Chris Doolin and some other people were able to get the governor's ear, and they were able to put back where each district got a $100,000 base. I believe it was $8 million. So I think, you know, this is one of the things that you see that as dollars, that BSA dollar increasing. And even though it's only increased at 153 because of the DCD, the district cost difference, that a lot of these things are being gobbled up out of categoricals into the FEFP. So that's what's driving the teacher salary increase dollars and those type of things. So.
All right, so looking at the teacher salary increase allocation, I'm showing, when I reported to you those categories, I reported to you a variance, a growth, or a decline. I didn't report to you the total dollar for that allocation. We look at only growth or decline when we start building our budget. We don't look at necessarily the total allocation. But in the context of TSIA, our total allocation, including charters, is a little over 1.4 million. Of that 1.4 million, they come along, they being DOE, and telling us that 988 needs to be shaved off the top, and that's what you get to use for your maintenance or your recurring costs of these last 2 years of expenditures. And then your total increase is 449,102. So that includes charters. So then they're breaking down the 449,102, and they're saying 50% can go to classroom teacher. Really, let's just think about that as, because we're under 47.5, 50% goes to get us up or as close to 47.5 as we can. And then the other 50% goes to those instructional personnel other than classroom teacher, or those who are above 40, the new minimum, wherever we can get it. That's changed. It used to be 80-20, which left less in the pot for your tenured teachers. Now there's a little bit more. So remember, last year we could only afford $75. So this year it may be 100 or 150. I haven't done the math. It'll be a little bit more, but it's not going to be thousands. But I think it's moving in the right direction. It's at least sending a signal that they somewhat understand that those over minimum also have some value. So now let's look at our recurring costs, because remember they shaved off that 988 and said that should be sufficient for you to cover those increases. So in 2021, we spent 880, now this would include benefits, 886, 711. Last year, we were a little over 109,000. So what we need, district needs for maintenance is 996,051. Well, they're giving us 988, and when I estimate what's going to be shaved off for the charters, we're going to roughly come up with about 957,000. So we're going to have a difference of about $40,000. So I'll take you back to the 53,000 that we had remaining. So there we've just spent 40 of it. So that's kind of how that when you just look at our FEFP and our calculations alone, the numbers are staggering and they look really great, and they are, but because you don't have flexibility and because the whole story can't be told, it's a little misleading of how this growth is going to be utilized. So I leave you with just a couple other things that we're all aware of, but we're constantly challenged with trying to figure out how to make the best decisions for our staff facing some of these challenges and our limited resources. I've mentioned salary compression. You've heard about it for 2 years now in your teacher schedule. You're going to hear about it for a while on your ESP schedule. Health insurance increases. That's continuing to be, we were hoping that we would see, as COVID declined, our health insurance would start to flatline. It's getting better, but the costs are still, I think this year they were about 500,000 more than they were previous year, at least in that one quarter they were. So we're still going to be facing these health insurance increases, and we're going to have to figure out how to make sure we're meeting compliance with our self-insurance fund. We have the FRS increases. We have the ESSER waive or cliff. We do have some salaries on that ESSER. We've set up a meeting. We're going to start discussing that, looking ahead 2 years. We want to minimize how steep that cliff is, but that ESSER, those ESSER funds do hold some recurring expenditures that we'll have to make a decision on, and then some software items and different things that could have to transition to the general fund that we just have to be cognizant of, because that would be in 2 years. The general fund can't just open its arms and take everything. I will tell you this year, backing up to the $15 an hour, we're already facing that a little bit with some of our federal budgets. They are being impacted on that increase. It's coming into the general fund. So we're having to shift some responsibilities off some of our federal dollars to compensate for that growth in that $15 an hour. We still continue to fight with unfunded and underfunded mandates. The family empowerment scholarships, I left off McKay because from what I hear, it's just going FES and it's going to continue to balloon. We have recruitment and retention issues across the state of Florida. It is not just Levy County, it is everywhere. And so we're constantly trying to face those issues. And then what we're seeing now, the inflation and increased operational costs are just staggering when you look at these fuel costs coming in and how much they have grown. And some of our other transportation needs that need to be met. So that was a lot of information. So any questions on any page? You want to back up and talk about anything?
Just, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on your calculations, I know you don't have all the numbers yet, but how have the new legislation, how has that impacted, if any at all, about our percentage, our little reserve percentage?
Our our fund balance
Yes.
reserve? Okay, so that right now, what I'm looking at is when I did that first estimate of how much we'll expend and how much we'll receive. The difference in that, as long as it is a surplus, feeds your fund balance. Right now, I'm not showing a deficit. I think we'll manage to maintain somewhere around the fund balance that we currently have. So I'm still projecting somewhere to 17 to 19%.
Okay.
Fund balance. I'm sorry, financial condition ratio. It would be higher for your fund balance. I don't know yet what impact that will have on assigned and unassigned, which is what comes together to create that financial condition ratio. And that'll just depend on how those expenditures shape up. But at the end of the day, I'm still looking like we will have a healthier financial condition ratio. But I'm very cautious because I really feel like what we're going to start feeling over the next 2 years is going to be dependent on how much we keep in that reserve, how much we can keep. We have a lot of issues we have to address.
I think when you look at how family empowerment has jumped, 2 years ago it was 600,000, last year was 1.8 million. That's ever increasing, and there's a in the statute, it's ever increasing, I think, until it hits 90% of the FEFP, which is not good for public education. So I think that's the thing, that it's a moving target, that you see a lot of transient natures. We see it here in Levy County, where you have kids in pockets of areas where they leave us. They may go visit a school that takes family empowerment and be there during the FTE October counts, and then we sometimes see them back in December. Or they may be there for the October and the February, and then we see them March. And those dollars don't translate and come back and follow those kids. So I think that's one of the things that you're seeing. I think the other thing, the minimum wage issue with House Bill 5001, this board had really took it upon itself to always stay ahead of minimum wage, of giving increases to our ESPs and looking out for our ESPs. And I think that's accelerated that timeline, and we see how that putting into place. We were hoping to have that in place July 1. We have a negotiations set for Thursday with the union and have an MOU that we need to get ironed out. That would be really beneficial to payroll, because we have some positions that July 1, whether we get that agreement in place, are going to be, because we will possibly lose funding, our pre-K teachers. If we don't have it ironed out by October, I have to sign an attest, and it has to go in place. And I think understanding that these dollars are just like the teacher salary increase. They're going on the front end. It's not like you can take any part of the pie and slide it to the back end. It's in House Bill 5001 that it has to go towards that. Whether we like it or not, that's what the statute is, and that's what the governor signed. So we're bound by that. And I think that's one of the things that this board has always prided in making sure to treat all of our staff fairly, and especially looking out for our ESPs. That 48% equates to 191 employees that would see a raise. So right there. I would say that Ms. Lake does a phenomenal job. She's given you a lot of information here, and you can see as we navigate through some of the things that this board has tried to do to take care of our people. So
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lott?
Good evening.
The agenda? We need to adopt the agenda.
We did.
Straight into the board
We did.
workshop.
We did.
Okay,
Yes, we
sorry.
did.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I
Yes, sir.
apologize.
I was reading it, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
too. I probably made the motion, Kenny said it.
So, our last meeting, we asked for permission to advertise, and on these new board policies that were given to us by NEFAC, most of them, all of them were given to us by NEFAC. Some of them were required, some of them we put forward to, because we saw a need and the schools saw a need. And really none of them have changed since our last meeting except for a couple. And so 5.41 student illness, basically the number one there, we got some more input from the health department, and they wanted to add a couple of other conditions that we would look for: rash, uncontrolled cough, communicable disease to that number 1. So that came via the health department. And then we added number 4, in emergency situations, school personnel shall contact emergency services in the interest of student health, which I thought was what Ms. Boyle had asked for, but I don't know if that's accurately captures what you requested or not.
A little bit.
Well, you can change it now. If you want to write it down for me, I can edit it.
You know, if council, I know that in an emergency situation that obviously all our personnel will contact emergency services. My thought process was just in the case that there's not an actual nurse or, you know, someone in the school that particular day, because there's always rotation, that if there is a child that's ill and no one kind of really knows what's going on, if within a certain time frame the parent cannot be reached, that, you know, non-emergency be called in just to evaluate the student because they can't go back to the classroom, the parent can't be contacted, but the student is just, something's not right. But there's no one there to make that certain medical call. So that,
So I think
that's that was my thought process.
So I think procedurally, every school has nurse personnel and backups that have been trained to make that call. So that sounds more like a procedural thing instead of a policy thing, but.
Well, sometimes there have been instances where they're just not there. I mean, it's not due to our inadequacy, it happens.
Does number 4 not cover that, John, Mr. Lott? In an emergency situation, school personnel shall contact emergency services in the interest of the school.
I would think, okay, let's just, if we talk it out, okay, so the nurse is not there, the backup's not there, the backup's they're not there, then that would fall to the principal, and the principal's like, hey, I don't know what's wrong with this student, let's call EMS. And let them figure it out.
You mean having like a flow chart maybe, if A, B, C?
Right. I think there's instances where the parent cannot be contacted, so you just wait and wait and wait until maybe at the end of the day, 3 hours passes, then the parent is contacted. And the parent may not know where their particular child is at medically and just say, okay, just go do this, because they don't know. They haven't been able to be reached within that time frame. So that's what I'm talking about, that time frame of
I guess
how do you,
I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, counselor. So if we said 2 hours, I mean, how do you quantify what's the time? That
exactly.
And then I preface this that we are about safety and security, but not tying our hands too much to the point where, once we put it in policy, and I will say that there's some more policies that are coming in July, that there is a big push about parents and any type of examinations and things like that, of making sure, to the point that we actually had parents that called because their students had their eyes checked, and they were furious at the school for doing an eye exam. And so those are the things that I'm just asking that we be careful. If that verbiage doesn't quantify or capture exactly what you're looking for, maybe we can figure out what, and to talk about procedurally, we have a situation, and I'll use, Williston L, where we've had situations, especially in that community, where we had, during COVID, Williston Middle High School has a certain type of illness that they need to get some type of medication. We've had coverage where somebody comes over, Cedar Key, Yankeetown, I think we've got the dedicated health tech there, along there on the rotation of the school nurse, and then we have 2 backups that would be there. So, and they're going to be trained at the beginning of school, so that first week of pre-planning to go through to make sure everybody understands procedurally. So I don't know if that gives you all the information that you need, or if there's more here that you would like to see. So, but I do caution us to tying our hands, so to speak, in anything policy-wise.
Your thoughts?
Sure. Because each health situation could be unique and each student's situation could be unique, I certainly wouldn't want to give a principal in this type of situation that you're talking about a false sense of security, like, oh, well, I can give this another hour because our policy says after 1 hour or 2 hours, then we do X, Y, or Z. If we have a student that's short of breath or just doesn't look good, I don't want to wait. So my suggestion would be, one avenue that we could pursue on this is we do training with our principals to remind them, they, in the rare circumstance where the health tech or the nurse and then the backups are not available, the decision is going to fall to them, and do not wait, do not hesitate if you are not able to get a hold of a parent. Because we're going to prioritize the student safety, and we're going to call EMS, and then if somebody's unhappy with a medical bill, we're going to come down on the side of safety, or a transport bill, we're going to come down on the side of safety. So it seems to me this is an opportunity with this policy language to do some good training, and that could address it, because I agree, I don't think that we want students out of class for 3 hours and not having great communication with the parent about what exactly is going on. So to wrap all that up, this policy does give us an opportunity to train principals on how to handle situations like that, and it still affords some flexibility, recognizing that each student is going to have a unique situation. I just don't want a false sense of security to say you've got a timeline before you have to make a decision.
Good point. So is what we have acceptable, or do we need to change anything else? Or?
So if you're not happy with it, you could make a motion. See if we get a second after that. You could make a motion to amend it, if you'd like to do that.
Is there a limit of verbiage that you have to put in there? Does it have to be so concise?
No, I mean, there's not a rule that says we're only limited to a certain number of words. It's not a 500-word essay.
I mean, I mean, it sounds maybe silly, but I'm thinking, you don't want to be too detailed, and yet that's why I asked about conciseness. I look at the verbiage here, and then I look at the situation, and that occurred, and no one was at fault. I'm not saying that. I just would never want that to happen again. And that's why I guess I keep going back to particular verbiage instead of an emergency situation. I have no doubt in my mind that any principal or any health aide or teacher, for that matter, if someone was having a hard time breathing, wouldn't call 911. I have no doubt about that. I'm just saying where we had the perfect storm in a scenario, somehow to stop that perfect storm to where it had a bad ending. Does that make sense? And if possibly the verbiage could, not to put us in a bind, Mr. Cowart, but to if no one can determine after a 3-hour period, I mean, I'm medically, you know, I'm familiar with a few things just based on my past in the medical field and such. But after that time period, if you can't have a decision by a parent that cannot be reached, and the staff that's there can't make a determination whether it's an emergency, that's it right there. If they can't make a determination if it is an emergency situation, to be on the safe side, that they call someone locally to be evaluated. That's it right there.
So we just need to do a better job of training them on what is an emergency situation.
Would you be okay with that if we adopted this and then in the next admin meeting?
I've already written it down, so to talk about it on the 18th when we have our principals and APs. So, and we have that training for the health techs and the 2 backups. So that's scheduled for August.
I think it is a good opportunity to do that too, because we all live in areas where we're 30 minutes away from Shands, and so I think it's a great opportunity to.
I'd like to think that out of every situation that we have, that we learn from it and we adapt. And
That's exactly.
So I believe, you know, and I know Miss Wade has had a lot of dealings with the health department, so and our school nurses, and that I believe we've captured it, and I think adding number 4 there and having the ability that we're going to have the training that we're going to have, so that we will capture what the board desires. So I'm not sure if there's, you know, if there's more verbiage that you want to add to it. I feel it's a training thing, it's not a policy, is where I see this. So, yes, sir.
I was working on some language that along the lines of, you know, if the parent or guardian cannot be reached for a discussion about their child, school personnel shall promptly contact emergency services. The problem even with that addition is I don't want to get into a debate with a parent who's not there with eyes on the child about whether EMS needs to be called or not. And so we could have a circumstance where the parent is contacted, they're saying, don't transport or don't call EMS, I'll be there in 30 or 45 minutes when my shift is over to come pick them up. And if any school personnel are uncomfortable with that as an outcome of the conversation, my advice is still going to be, we're going to act in the best interest of the child when they're under our supervision. So even an addition like you're talking about, I think would be difficult to add to this language because it doesn't capture those scenarios where the school and the parent maybe don't see eye to eye on exactly what needs to happen. And we want to turn it over to a trained healthcare provider who can decide. And not every child gets transported. Sometimes EMS comes and they look and they do an assessment and they say this child doesn't need to go. But that's way beyond our scope of what we can take care of.
Understand. Possibly at that principal's training, because we all know that sometimes the principals aren't even there. That the principals trickle it down to everyone. That is passed on.
If I may, I think I've been invited to the next principal's training, and I think that would be a good opportunity for me to.
And I do have that written down on our list of things to cover. And I do want to say too, if I may, that Kaylee created a really great spreadsheet that has backups for every campus, like I think up to 4 that are going to be trained. So it's not just 1 or 2 anymore. We've expanded that, so that might help, you know, making sure there's enough people on the campus that are trained and knowledgeable about this, but certainly David will cover that at our 18th.
So I will be at that meeting, and invariably, in my experience when I've been there, we get a good turnout from principals and APs, and we'll definitely emphasize to them the board's concern and just our general safety concern. We want to respect parents' rights regarding their children, but we're also going to take care of the children. And I will drive that one home.
Okay. I think I warned you of other policies that would be coming, and I did get those last Thursday. There's 15 additional besides these 10 that we are working our way through. We farmed it, sent it out to different people who are more expert in those particular fields. So we're working through those, and in doing that, one of them, in fact, two of them, two of the policies, the new policies were on policies that are in this current queue in the 10. So we've got updates to policies we haven't even approved yet. And one of those happened to be 5.42, school health services. And so when I sent this to Ms. Wade, she said, well, there would be some changes, so let's go ahead and just get it right the first time. And so she's already taken those edits and put them into what we had proposed to you previously. Does that make sense? So she's updated them already. And so these are the updates. You see some language that was stricken and some additional language that was added, which is underlined. And also number 4, that whole number 4 was added. That's additional new language. And so, as we talk about, the parental rights legislation and stuff, all this kind of fits into that. And so that's been changed. Those two policies were the only policies that had any edits since the last time you saw them.
Are we advertising? Well, we got one more, and we'll adopt these on the July 21st.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
We'll adopt these on the 21st, and then hopefully we will have the new batch ready for you, and we would ask for permission to advertise those. And we're looking at possible ways to incorporate some of them into other things you'll approve, like controlled open enrollment policy and different things, so that we don't actually have to do a board policy, but it's still a board-approved plan that you have to give your signature to and approval to. So, my way of thinking, anything you approve is board policy, whether it's policy or plans, pupil progression plans, whatever it may be. So we'll have those hopefully ready for you at the next meeting. Are there any questions on any of the other policies?
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Lett.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I know you guys have had a chance to look over the consent agenda. Ms. Boyle, do you have any remarks?
No, ma'am, my questions have been answered. Just enjoy some new teachers being transferred, and we're not losing them, but we see some go too. So it's just a tough time with change, and thank you to Mrs. Hires for all that you do.
Ms. Brookins?
Mine have been answered. I'm very sorry to see Pam Sheffield, that she's going to transfer or move, but Mr. Cowart has answered all my questions. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent
I
agenda?
make a motion to approve.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now we'll go on the consent finance portion of our agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the finance portion?
I make a motion to approve the finance portion of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It's that time of where we've got people scattered training. So last week was math best standards. So I had quite a few that were out. So this week is AVID going on, and just a lot of time of people getting ready. And Ms. Boyle, I appreciate you giving kudos to Ms. Hires. So it is a busy time. So, and we're starting to use some different things. So we've been posting on Indeed. And I will say that Williston Middle High School was able to hire, I believe, 5 people last week. So they got 5 teachers hired. So appreciate being able to tap into some new ways to get out there and get some new people hired. And just excited for the time. So looking forward to the rest of the summer. July is busy. We will have a couple admin trainings for them. And we also have an effect summer leadership conference that some of our people will be attending, and so just appreciate you guys and appreciate the board recognizing the hard work that goes in during the summertime. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cowart. Ms. Boyle?
I don't have a lot. I do know that the summer program is excited for a Tampa Bay ball game that they're going to see on Wednesday. So that's a pretty big deal. They're very excited about that. And just continued prayers for our board member, Mr. Asbell, and his family. Been thinking about him this past week, and just say a prayer every day for him. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle. Ms. Brookins?
I saw the Chieftain High School construction today, and they're coming along, and the old middle school, or the old elementary school that I remember so well is really gone. I mean, there's a wall standing, it's gone. So they just continue to just move out. They're doing a great job. Any updates you have or anything?
Well, they'll be starting their stone columns, which is the extra foundation they have to put in because of sinkhole activity in the area. They'll be starting that probably next week, and bring in the crane and all. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a remarkable thing. So they'll start that, and pretty soon by I think September, middle of September, they'll have all the slabs poured for those foundations. So everything's on schedule, and the actual metal should be there this week, and they'll be storing it on site so they don't have to have any delays for that. Hopefully, probably in the spring of 23, we'll have a new gymnasium completed.
Yeah,
There's still being some other work, some of the paving and things that we have to do, but it's definitely on schedule because considering construction, material delays, and so forth, we've done really well. We've been really lucky. Players will call. Now, we'd like to remind the board that on the 21st, after our meeting, we'll have a ribbon cutting over at the front of the school. So that should be a good time.
Good. Thank you. Oh, and then this I pulled up. I thought that was Cedar Key School, and they're having that swim to benefit. That's really exciting. The sharks. Are you gonna do it?
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Chris might want to do it too.
What is it?
It's a swim. They're going to swim over to the island to benefit the school.
Yeah, count the shark fins along the way.
Yeah. I thought that was really nice. A nice fundraiser for Cedar Key.
Might be our emergency flow chart then.
Yeah.
We most definitely would need it if I participated. So yes. So.
But I thought it was neat. But anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
I don't have a lot either. Summer school's in full swing in Yankeetown. I think Dee said we're averaging 25 a day, which is a big number, especially for Yankeetown. Step the Bus, July 16th, 11 to 2, which just reminds us all how quickly summer's flying by. Miss Lake's presentation tonight, some of the words you said, it bugs me. Like the fact that we're relying on the E-rate, and the fact that you said manage, and the fact that we're having to get creative. I just am an advocate for public education, and when I see how much we have to beg and borrow to have a good public education, I would love to see a number of the people in a big picture that send their kids to public education versus a private school, the ones that are really making these decisions. And I know we have states right now like Arizona that not only have school choice, but they're also giving $7,000 to parents to kind of further that private school option. And I just, I think we have to step back and really fight for public education at times, and see what the big agenda is. But that is all I have to say. One more thing, I'm honored to serve you guys for 4 more years. Thankful for our county and thankful to serve.
So proud.
Thank you. Meeting